So, I'm so um, honored, really. It's wonderful to have Joya DeCruz here with us. And Joya is a very, very experienced focusing oriented therapist. So, working with Jenlyn's felt sense, as I am too. And Joya's been doing this work for a long time, maybe as long as me, maybe not quite. I don't know who. Some of us have been around for 40 years doing this work. But certainly you've been doing it for a long time. And Joya has roots first in India, right? You were born and raised
Yeah,
in India.
yeah.
And then you have family in Canada that live not too far from me, actually. I'm in Toronto and they're an hour away or so.
Yep.
And you're in
I'm
Mil
in Michigan.
Michigan, right, right.
I'm in Ypsilanti, Michigan, which is about 4 hours away. I'm a Canadian citizen and an American citizen, and I've chosen to live here.
Yeah, well, we're lucky
Yeah,
to have you with us.
it's been
Okay,
great.
so we're going to spotlight Joya for the first part, and then Joya and I will do a little dialogue around bringing the work into a more maybe polyvagal language. Maybe not. We'll see where Joya's at with all that, but it certainly is. Jenlyn's work is so polyvagal, and as Steve Porges actually said after being introduced to Jenlyn, he said, "I think that Jenlyn intuitively understood polyvagal theory," and
Mm.
that is just so true. And that's why I put them together because they just fit. Okay,
Yeah,
so let's spotlight Joya. Wonderful, and
it's interesting. Thank you so much, Jan. I think I did my first level one or introduction in 96, 95, and 96 with BB Simon.
oh,
And we used to make fun of focusing and felt sensing because we had this gentleman who would say, "Let me check inside," and he would do this thing. And so we would laugh about it. But then I went back for level one and two, and then I became a teacher's trainer just because there was something to that. Let me check inside. um, but for most of the thing, I think I tell people that I love focusing and felt sensing just because I'm lazy, and it's the shortest cut to a lot of complexity and a lot of everything. And I like to go straight to the heart of it. And I think there something in our systems are like the control room in a starship, spaceships, where it just goes all over and it gets all the information that we don't need to hold, and it just comes out with the core. That's what I love about felt sensing and focusing.
hmm.
Ah, so um, I'd like to start by maybe inviting us to do a little orientation exercise that I learned when I was working through a year-long program with Resma Menakim. I don't know if you're familiar with Resma, but this is the book that we worked through together, My Grandmother's Hands. And so let's take a moment and just look around your room, the room that you're in a lot of the time. But we're going to start with one side and move to the next, and really slowly taking in from the floor upwards colors and objects, noticing windows, doors, exits. Don't forget the ceiling. And maybe you'll find things that you find comforting or that you like, or some things that don't like very much around your room. And I'd like to invite you to turn your hips, turn your body a little bit to the back if you can, as far back as is comfortable without hurting yourself. And just notice what's behind you. Notice what that's like to check what's behind us, because even if we know we're safe, sometimes our bodies don't know that. And so we're giving our bodies a chance to really look around and notice what that's like. You can come back when you're ready to face your desks, computers, or whatever, and notice what it's like to come back and look at the screen with everyone's faces there. Perhaps you're on that screen where you can see either mine or everyone else's. Just notice, what's that like for you? And I'm going to gradually move us into another exercise from Shirley Turcotte's work. And you're just going to ask inside, if I were a piece of nature, what would I be today? What do I feel like today? Do I feel like a tree? What kind of a tree am I? Or perhaps I'm a rock or the earth. Or I feel more like a cloud in the sky or the wind. Perhaps a body of water, like maybe a pond or a puddle or a waterfall, or an animal or a little bird or an insect. What do I feel like today? Just sense into that. And if I were that, what do I feel around me? What do I sense around me? Am I connected to other things, other pieces of nature? Is there more of my kind around me, or am I kind of alone? How am I connected to everything else? Is it cold? Is it sunny? What do I notice around me? Am I old? Am I really old? Have I been here for a long, long time? Or am I kind of new, kind of young? Noticing your roots, your connections to the past. And take a moment more to just sense into what's it like to be what you are right now. Do I feel resourced? Is there something I'm feeling a need for, being the tree, the cloud, the waterfall that I am? Just notice. And as you begin to come back to our Zoom room with everyone else present, just take a moment to sense, what's the one thing that I got in this little piece of exercise today? What's the one blessing? What's the medicine I received? just now. And see if you can name something. What did I learn? What did I feel? And when you're ready, just bring your body, your awareness back, and welcome. Normally, I would have us share, but I'm going to have you just take notes and remember so you can share with your friends later, maybe with each other if you're connected. So reflecting back on what we did, we're using our bodies without being super aware of our physical bodies or going internally to be aware. So by connecting with pieces from nature, which we and our clients can do very easily, it can become a practice to stay in touch with how am I. It's important when we find out when someone else is feeling like a bedraggled tree that's just been through a tornado. It's like, aha, I hear, I feel, I sense you. Or if someone's like a whole big cloud full of water, you ready to shower down, you get another sense of the person, but we can connect with each other and internally without bringing deep focus inside. One of the things that I like to use with my clients is explaining trauma to them very simply. And I think Jean was the one who would say, be like a child. If a child can say it in as a 5-year-old, try to be a 5-year-old. Say it simply. Anything more complex may not be worth sharing. I'm not sure, Jen, if I'm making it up, but I really do believe I may have heard Jane sharing that.
It sounds like Chandler and Joya. Although he was very complex, right?
Extremely. I do believe that Jean put into words for us what Zen masters and poets have striven to give us an experience of, and he was able to enter this very intellectual world of ours and put words to it, even though he made up words a lot, which I loved about him. Mm-hmm. That was his brilliance of saying it's something-ish or kind of like, which destroys our very clean, matter-of-fact, perfect verbiage and opens it up to, what more is that? What more is there? So Isabel Benarus is a woman that I really love her work. She works with physical illnesses and how the body holds trauma through the physical illness. She describes it very simply, and that's something I share with clients, is that somewhere along the way, we had these very difficult things happen, which was too much for us to take. And so we just pushed it down and said, you stay in the body because I have to function. I have to be okay. And we move on in life, and something gets stored in our bodies to protect us and help us to function. And there comes a time in life's kind and cruel way, I say, kind because it's giving us an opportunity to look into and resurface with new strengths some difficult things that are stuck in the body. Unfortunately, that doesn't often happen. We have 100 times that we re-experience those traumas. They get very set in us and practiced. And then comes a time when we can really explore and evaluate. So evolution will work in a way to help us draw into our lives circumstances that offer us an opportunity to reconfigure and heal. The third piece that I like to in a timely way explain to clients is that it's a whole body experience. Everything is a whole body experience. So you and I sitting here today, we are experiencing neurons firing. There's all kinds of wonderful juices flowing in our bodies, chemical juices, where our emotions are activated, our memory is activated, we're forming new memories right in this moment. All that is happening constantly. And so if there's any experience that has some difficulty in it, we can actually intervene at the physical level, at the memory level, at the emotional level. We can intervene, we can interrupt those patterns going forward. So that's the reason I really keep bringing up the complexity of every single moment's experience, which we have learned patterns of. And if we have learned it, we can unlearn. And so these very simple things is something that I practice. So what I'm going to do going forward is a lot of little practices that I do right here in the moment in the room with my clients. So I assume many of us are therapists, but if you're not, it's still something you can do with your families or anytime. One of the most important things is modeling the awe, the respect, the curiosity that is called, in other words, a focusing attitude that embodies a focusing attitude with a client. So if I know what trauma is about, that something happened and your brilliant, complex way found dysfunctional, what a lot of us call dysfunctional ways, which were actually adaptive, brilliant, wise ways. If I can be curious about it and in awe of it, that helps you to dissolve the shame or the worry, the doubt, the lack of self-esteem that surrounds what we call those that they have learned, clients have learned as dysfunctional or maladaptive. So when I begin to notice, oh, wow, is that how your brilliant inside place, your system chose to protect you and help you to function? Clients actually sense that, and then you're inviting them into a joint and collegial relationship working through their traumas. I also love Gene's process model, where he says if a plant has the knowing to veer towards the light, one plant has the knowing to veer towards the light to survive and thrive, and another one goes into the dark and finds its way in dark, mossy areas, mushy areas. That's the plants knowing, and animals know exactly where to hide, when to come out, what to eat. How much more do we have that knowing? And so we're going to learn to trust and discover that knowing in order to move forward. And so my job as a therapist is to listen to your knowings and help you be guided by them. And that's my work. Some of the questions that we can offer is, what wise, aka dysfunctional ways, did some of your younger selves create in order to live through some difficult times? So helping people to name the wise ways in which they chose to survive and thrive through difficult times, which could be a shutting down, a distraction, intellectualizing, perhaps a pain in the body. So you're going to identify some of the wise ways your inner selves, your older selves were able to live through some difficult times. How did they serve you? How did they save you, protect you? And so this is all about preparing clients, preparing us to go into other areas. Third, can you imagine what may have happened if you did not have that way? If you did not shut down, what would it have been like? What if you didn't learn to keep real quiet? What if you didn't learn to be the professional bitch? What would have happened? And yes, feel free to use language that normalizes common language. Very often we therapists have psychological language, and I think we need to normalize into street language in order to open that sense of people expressing things as they hear it, feel it, sense it. So those three things, three questions. What wise ways can you name? How did they serve you, protect you, or save you? And can you imagine what may have happened if you didn't have those ways? I'm going to move into a few different things. One is staying in charge. How do we stay safe? Defenses as familial tools. So one of the ways that I assure clients who don't like to come to therapy, don't want to do their work perhaps, is that you can always go back to the defenses that you already know naturally, but you can use them consciously. So if you know how to distract yourself, great. You know, you can always revert to that. No worries. You know how to do that. And, you know, that brings a reaction like I'm telling them to do exactly what they've come here to undo. But when you can name it as, wow, that's a brilliant thing. So even though we're trying to move away from that because it's not serving you anymore, you can feel safe and go back to that anytime. So perhaps a twitch or stammer, a physical sensitivity, laughter. Great, you know how to do that, and we can work through that. The second one is pattern interrupt. So we play with that a lot. We identify different patterns, and I annoy them a lot by interrupting. And I'm like, you know what I just did? You can do that for yourself. So right in the middle of something, whether it's good or bad, we interrupt. And then we're like, oh, I can do that at home. So when you're in that spiral where you're thinking those negative thoughts or the painful thoughts, if you remember our session and the more we practice it, you'll interrupt yourself. You'll sing happy birthday. You can count back from 90. You can tap, and I teach them tapping. You can text a friend and say, oops, I'm having a shame attack. So that way they actually are allowed to text me without expecting a response, just to let someone else know that's what it is I'm identifying. So just the texting itself, or the singing happy birthday, or standing up, any one movement, a breath, helps them to interrupt patterns. What would work for you? So take a moment and let's do it for ourselves. Is there a pattern that you know you get into? And is there a way, a favorite way, a creative way that you can interrupt that? All right, moving right along. They get to learn that the body doesn't know the difference between reality and memory. We play with that a lot. So I ask them their favorite food. It's like, okay, ice cream. And we wait for the mouth to salivate. And it's like, can you see that we just have to think about something and we can salivate? You can get turned on by an image. You can go into a deep depression watching a movie. And so we go through a number of these where we very deeply get that we are the creators, or we can be the creators of our whole body experiences. And so I go through a number of examples and we play in session, calling to mind something and noticing a response. What this does is it gives you a sense of agency. And all we're doing is practicing agency, agency, agency. I have control. I am in charge. I also mentioned sometimes it's about like being an actor on stage. You can take on a role. You can take on a role and be that role fully, purposely, and then take it back. So we also practice negative things. So can you feel a bad thing, like an unpleasant interaction, and then go ahead and now switch to a positive interaction? And how does that feel? And we're not going internally again, we're just getting a sense of it. And that's the power of the felt sense, a whole experience of an issue. So they get to put reminders of pattern interrupts in their houses or on their cell phones or with their friends or me, reminding them, how can I practice pattern interruption and feel the discomfort of that pattern? You survive, we all survive pattern interruptions, and how much more can I gain by purposely interrupting it myself rather than life, which is very good at interrupting all our patterns. And so if someone likes to keep their coaster in a particular direction and likes it, spick and span, I invite them to twist it a little bit and feel the discomfort of things not being in a place or a chair in the room. Whereas someone else who is untidy, it's like, feel the discomfort of tidiness and notice that. The fourth one is making meaning of our felt experiences. So we tend to have experiences and then interpret them. And clients get to see the reality of it. So I give them an example of a client coming in late, and I begin, depending on what I'm going through in that moment, I'm like, damn, they don't even value me. Or it could be, oh my gosh, I wonder if they're okay. Or I would be judging them and saying, yeah, they have a lot of money, they don't give a crap about sessions, they'll come back for another one. So depending on who I am and what I perceive in my social relationship with them, I get to interpret, and I give them a chance to explain, how do you interpret? Notice the interpretation, especially in couple relationships also, we're constantly interpreting. You didn't call me means you don't love me. I don't feel loved. The truth is, they didn't call me because they're clueless or because something happened busy. It had nothing to do with the relationship. So we give examples of the process of interpreting, making meaning of what we're experiencing, and giving them a chance to shift that from having had a meal to being hungry makes a big difference to your interpretation. Finally, grounding in something that makes you feel safe and comfortable. So we practice a lot of grounding. So I myself have rocks as big as this here, or little ones, and I use them. I show clients, this is what I have. So if I ever need, and I need to feel this, I have this. Across me, there is a picture where if I need to, I can look at it and my body settles. I feel good. Or I like to have a blankie around me because that makes me feel cozy. So giving them felt examples and experiences. My office at my workplace is full of blankets and rocks and feathers and all plants that they can lean into and make their own when they go home. I'm going to take a moment for you to take that in, and I'm just going to go through. We did, how do we stay in charge and stay safe? Using defenses as familiar tools, interrupting patterns, recognizing that the body doesn't know what's real from memory, interpreting, making meaning of our felt experiences, and grounding in things that make us feel safe and comfortable. The third part that I'm going to cover today is moving into training. So again, practicing, how can I work with situations in a wise way? In focusing, we have one of the concepts is the right distance. And so I use that in showing, modeling, and practicing with clients. How can I create the right distance between me and anything else. And sometimes I say me and I do this because I say it is that observer part of me, the consciousness, the soul, whatever you may call it, that which observes even me, observes my thoughts, my body, my emotions, and I can keep a distance from that as well. And we play with that. So I walk up to a picture. So there's this, I have a phone here. And if I put it this close, I only see a faint blue. I can't see anything more than that. And if I move it so far away, I just see a dot of blue. But I have to bring it to the right distance for me, different for someone else, and I can get right and read exactly what I want to read. Similarly, with emotions, even though it's an experience, I can say, oh, that anger piece is big. Let's move it away. So we scoop and move it and put it somewhere else on the earth, somewhere where it feels just right for me, not too far that I ignore it, but not too close that I can't even breathe. And we notice inside how it feels. There's like, oh, wow, that moved further away. So this is energetic movement. So we really do this. We do this a lot of moving and putting it out there. Issues, emotions, thoughts, trauma can be moved just at the right way, in the right direction from the person. Someone actually allowed me to put it like, no, I want it right outside the room. It's like, all right, that's possible too. We did that. So finding the right distance. Befriending the body. Just noticing different parts. So we're going to stay very neutral. We're going to stay with the 5 senses. Typically, I do not go internal initially. And so just every once in a while, it's like, what's it feel like in your hands? What's it feel like? And so we're just sensing and touching. What's the fabric of your skin on your clothes? Just feel that. And just sensing into that in a light way and moving on. So it becomes a habit. We're making friends with our body in the ways that feel good and safe. Wiggling your toes, you become aware of them. Foot soaks, smells. So in my workplace, I have things like mint and rosemary, and we use that to crush and smell. That's actually also really good. Thank Shirley Turcott. I did indigenous focusing oriented therapy for complex trauma with her. And we leaned into all the resources of the land, the indigenous people, that is extremely wise. And inhaling this deeply, taking a couple of breaths with that, brings one back into their bodies, into reality. So some of the examples I'm giving you are ways in which I can ground and come right back if ever I leave. What color do you feel? I have a bunch of Rothko paintings, and I would ask clients, what color do you feel today, or what draws you? And very often I would hear something like, I usually like red, but I'm really drawn to that one. And we would just be curious. No interpretation, just, yeah. So color also tunes us, moves us into an observing, like I'm experiencing color, but I don't have to worry about it or do any deep searching. What's the weather like for you today? Is it stormy? Is it sunny? That's a great way also for me to get a sense for the person without them having to name anything in psychological, emotional language. The example that we did earlier, the meditation, pick an aspect of nature. What kind of, you could pick either a tree. I start off many of my sessions that way. What do you feel like today? What kind of a tree are you? Your roots. We tap into ancestral stuff, collective, sense of connection with other things, loneliness. So all of that information can come by looking at nature, also stories. So looking at what movies, stories, children's tales do they connect with? Do we connect with? And from that, you can get a felt sense of something about them in that moment. What are you drawn to? And again, it's out there, but I can't be out there and tell you it's meaningful for me without being connected. So that's a great way of, getting to know someone or something, and they recognizing what's happening, that they can go inside, and it's totally okay that they don't go inside, but they can access something about themselves from out there. What happens when we work with their stories and their movies and songs and poetry is we companion them, we validate and normalize, and we also witness. We mirror for them something that perhaps they have not had mirrored in the way that we might. So there's a very deep connection and blessing to them when we witness their stories. Metaphorical language, focusing language is really awesome because of I mentioned it earlier, encouraging squeamish or squiggly, or it's like blah, 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 blah. That's what it really feels like, blah, 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 blah. Most of us don't allow that language, but the body needs to know that that feels right. What are you feeling? I'm not angry. I'm, aha, that's what you feel. And that captures way more than anger or rage. And so idea is they are connecting while describing it in the words and the language and the sounds that resonate for them. There's one piece that also is helpful. And again, we're cautious about using this piece, but self-touch, where I'm in charge, I'm an agent of my own body. And so I apply touch in a way that feels safe and even delicious for me. So I know there's something called havening, which I discovered. I was like, oh, this we all do, but there's a name for it which validates us using it. And so even touching the head, walking down our faces and our necks, we're connecting with our vagal system and feeling the sense of connection, even though we may be isolated and alone or afraid of touch. Here we are experiencing exactly the touch, but we are in charge, we are aware that it's us. So all of these are inviting a sense of agency while discovering through our five senses, metaphors, the earth, others, a sense of connection to ourselves. And with that, I think I will ask if you can take just a minute to take it all in. And then we can move into questions. Notice what came up for you and what is it that you have received so far. Is there one or two things at least that you can take away with you?
So, Joya, because we don't have as much time, I'm just going to cut that a bit short. Wish we could let people just really enjoy, that space that you are such a master at really deeply honoring the body.
Mm.
People talk about it and we strive for it. Everything about you, in my sense of co-regulating with you, is deeply, deeply connected to honoring, really understanding how bodies work. And so I love these three questions, and I'm going to honor your work by bringing them into my addiction group because they really get at, these questions of what ways did you use to survive? And how did they serve you and save you? And what would it have been like for you without them? This is also very true of addictions. And yet, imagine how bold it is to say that, to declare that, right? It's also true of multiplicity. These are all things that we pathologize because we don't understand how bodies work. So thank you so much. I fully intend to listen to this again, and I'd love to get together with you and really bridge these concepts that Jenlyn brought, that, Porges and so many people have brought. Have you written about this? Okay, we're going to get together. Okay, let's open it up because I really want people to have a chance to chat with you. So maybe you can just bring us back to gallery view, I guess. What do you think, Annette?
That remove the spotlights.
Yeah, let's come back to gallery so we can see everybody and then just see who has questions or comments.
People they can raise their actual hand, they can raise their
Well, Mustafa had raised his hand here.
right,
Annette.
right there.
Hi, Mustafa.
Hello. Thank you so much for your sharing. For both of you, I really enjoyed both the topics and the pacing and the tone of how it was shared and the space between what was shared. It was really helpful, and um, it felt grounding to help me process the information that was shared. So I really appreciate the embodiment of the work that you both do. I did want to say that, working with a client this morning, I did feel heat coming through my body as they were sharing something very personal that resonated within me in my own life. And because of the practice of focusing and mindfulness, I noticed the shifts in my body for what they are. And it helped force me step into even more presence, knowing that this is a moment where I need to be as attentive to and shift from self reactivity to just be with my client and the experience. So my question for you would be, what other ways can a healer or therapist or practitioner shift in the moment when there is a reaction in their nervous system in session? What other approaches you have found helpful? Thank you very much.
For me, one of the things that I use is immediately my hand goes to my heart the moment, or my belly. It's kind of like it's saying in a felt way, it's okay, I got you. Because it usually is a younger part of me that has been activated through my body. And I already know that from the past, knowing the kind of triggers I have. And so it's just like a sense of, I got you. And I give myself permission to just be present and not feel like I need to do anything with the client. That's the other permission that I kind of need for myself, that I can just make it safe and be with my little one, say, we'll deal with you later, but I got you. Mm.
Beautiful.
I don't know if you want to add something, Jan.
That sounds very close to what I would do too, is to really check inside with myself and make a note that I need to go back there. So just tending to self in a really, kind way. And then taking the time after to go back there, which is, can be tricky, but so important as a practice. I loved your way of talking about interrupting patterns, Joya. These neural pathways, right? They get laid down in the body. Especially you see that a lot with dissociation and addiction. And that practicing of interrupting that goes along with, really promoting daily practices, right? I like people to start in the morning, start your day with one of those practices. And then interrupting, playing with the back and forth of it is so great.
Mhm.
Yeah. These are what Steve calls neural exercises.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Meredith, did you have your hand up? Somebody else had their hand up.
Hi, I started to come a little bit late today, but I really loved what I heard. I really appreciated you sharing the piece on just normalizing the behaviors as adaptive, of course, but also the permission or the invitation to return to things that have been reliable. I thought that was really beautiful to name that. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Yes, I agree with that. And again, imagine with addiction saying, oh, well, it's, yeah, we work collaboratively with the body. So if the body decided it needed to binge on a lot of food or whatever else that is that you do, and that happened, well, okay, let's notice that, right?
It sort of feels a little bit like the principle of titration that I've learned in the
Yes.
SE of like, rather than going from one extreme to another, it's just this beautiful gradation of approach. So it feels more compassionate.
Yes, and it's also very much as Joy, you were talking about the closeness and distance that Jean would talk about a lot, and that's the real titration thing. But there's something, this added piece of the shift in paradigms when we really understand how bodies work and we really understand what that answer to that third question of yours, Joya, what would have happened to you without the power to dissociate? You would have had to endure being raped or whatever that is. Thank God our bodies have that.
Mhm.
And yet here all we do in the traditional DSM model is to pathologize it and call it maladaptive. I mean, surely we could think about how context tells the story, right? So this is what I mean about your gift for really, really emphasizing that so strongly.
And the other piece is, the shame around having forgotten. I don't remember. And there's a desperate, I should remember. And it's like, great, you don't remember. Wonderful. There's some things you don't want to remember.
Yes.
So again, it's just making light of it. And there's something about the tone and just the play, like they get play practices. And I share a lot just because it's kind of like almost a decolonizing. Yes, I'm here to hold space for you, but I'm not the know-it-all. And so I'm just like, I don't know what works for you, but if I'm expecting to show up in a different way and a trigger shows up, it's not going to happen. When the trigger happens, I'm a lizard. I'm just going to be exactly that way. So then they say, oh, you too? And I was like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So we all are that way. And so how do we prepare for that, trigger place?
May I add one other idea? I'm curious, Joya, in this idea of inviting clients to return to what's known and just gradually allowing their systems to adapt to maybe the new ways of keeping themselves safe, that eventually it kind of meets in the middle of like almost like a bridge and there's a handoff and there's this really gentle, I don't need that anymore because now I have this that's holding. And so there's less struggle and just a gradual, natural change that occurs. It's almost kind of subtle and quiet rather than something grandiose and
Yeah,
potentially destabilizing.
that sounds so beautiful. Yeah, it's almost like a noticing of a ceremonial handing over. Yeah, I don't need it anymore. Beautiful.
How are people feeling in their bodies? It's really a very, very powerful paradigm shift, and it's a challenging one for our bodies even to make, to heal the shame, because we're really totally entrenched in this idea of pathology, especially around behaviors that are self-soothing and self-harming, right? It's like, you're crazy, you're masochistic, you're borderline. All of these ways that we shame and shame and shame. So it's a really big event, you know, that can happen slowly over time. It can also come in what I call these moments of liberation, where you realize, oh my God, this is just my body doing what it was designed to do. It was an adaptive, instinctive response.
And to emphasize, in my training with Shirley Turcotte, it brings in the natural way the indigenous have dealt with their traumas. They have not had exposure to professional work, but from eons back, they have learned natural ways. And so to play with those, lean into them and seek, like attune to the wisdom and the strength from those traumas, not despite the traumas, but because of the traumas. And that itself makes a person say, wow, I am today because of that trauma, because that happened, and such and so and forth. So, and there's a lot of laughter. And if we are in a good place, which is what, you know, she calls of being in the north, being in the direction of the mature adult or the elder, we model that. It's safe to go into places. We can enjoy exploring the trauma. We can master those patterns and not be victims of them.
Yes, and that fits so nicely with the, you know, the concept of co-regulation.
Yes.
That it's so important for us as healers and parents and partners and just human beings to really work towards more ventral experiences that we can then bring through our bodies, through our relational felt sense together with other. Yeah, the North Star. Shirley Turcotte's work, if people don't know Shirley, oh my goodness, Indigenous woman, brought focusing oriented therapy, really developed it so beautifully because, of course, right, focusing is embodiment and Indigenous practices are embodiment. People have held on to those practices, right, Joya, because they haven't been contaminated by Western, you know, and I'm not saying all of Western stuff is bad, obviously. I mean, there's so much of bringing together that integration of Western science and, you know, Eastern practices, right? This is the integrated model of polyvagal theory. It's also what Genlin advocated. He wasn't against Western science, but we've used it in ways that have really oppressed experiencing.
I think Jillian had a question. You're muted.
I might have missed this, but are we going to have access to the recording? Because I was so experientially doing it, I didn't want to take notes.
All of the classes are recorded, Jillian. And
Perfect.
actually, the good news is we're moving to a new app and website that's going to help us tremendously with sharing and being together in the group. It does mean that you'll have to download the app, but we're working on how to make that a smooth transition. But it's going to help a lot with us being able to connect, you know, through the app on our phones or wherever we are, and to chat together. It's very interactive, and yeah, and all of these are recorded. Sometimes people find it hard to find them because of the way that the kind of linear sense in this group is. You got to run down and find it and then go back up to the top. We've had a lot of issues with it, but things are getting better soon, very soon. So yeah,
Thank you.
it'll be available. They all are. You should check them out. We're developing a library. We have past ones with Steve Porges who came, for example. So
You'll receive an email. If you've registered for one of the events, you get an email afterwards once the recording's available.
Thank you.
Maybe I can ask my question now. Joy, I'm curious if you could say a little bit about when people are ready for focusing. We've talked mostly about not going inside the body, but what are the signs for you when somebody's ready to do that work?
That's so interesting. I was just going to address that anyway. It's almost like the body will know it and they will be doing it.
Mm, beautiful.
And I do the invitation by the sound of the tone and the pacing. So I would look away, and that invites the person to go inward in a reflective mode, and they do what they want with it. And I don't guide that. So that makes it less engaging. I'm not asking you a question you need to answer me, but I'm inviting a reflection. And they naturally go, I was wanting to emphasize how important it is to not do what we focuses are really good about, closing our eyes and going inside. That could be an expectation. I remember a client where we were working somatically and she didn't tell me ever that she was getting triggered, but she would freeze. And I didn't have any indication of that, which is typical of some kinds of trauma, right? You just get silenced and you just perform. And I'll never forget how I learned that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And so that cautioned me going forward to be attuned to the adaptive response, to just follow and please and oblige while you're getting re-traumatized. So the closing the eyes, I almost never say close your eyes. Can go there. They will do it if they need to. Does that?
Yeah, thank you.
You can see it in body, right? In the way the body is held. In that sympathetic place, you'll see the constriction with freeze. And in the dorsal place, you see the collapsing inwards. So very important to watch bodies.
Yeah.
Andrea, one last question, I think.
Yes. I am a retired therapist, so I'm not in practice to use these skills any longer, but I still get questions from friends and friends of friends and friends and friends and friends for referrals. And I'm wondering how I can refer people to some of you who do this kind of work, because I think it's just amazing.
Well, this is a good thing that we'll be able to do more of when we've got this new app. But you can also post it on the group page. People have done that before, asking for, does anybody know somebody in this area or somebody that does this kind of work? And we do read them, and we will do our best to get back about, a good reference. Yeah.
And can this work be done online?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we do that all the time. Yeah.
Well, we just did.
It's amazing. Yeah, we just did. It's amazing what you can actually see and feel online, right?
Yeah.
Even right now, if you check into your body, I don't know about you, but mine's kind of humming. It's like, wow, this was great. Thank you so much, Joya.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I wanted to add a last piece that very often I am pretty much not taking on new clients, and many people are overwhelmed right now or tired as therapists. However, I encourage people to get attention anyway, because I trust the inner process. So whether it's acupuncture or massage, there are people who are attuned massage therapists, trauma informed, or encouraging them to do those kind of things so that they get the support that they need, even though they can't find a psychotherapist or a psychotherapist they can afford.
There are also, Gendlin started changes groups back in the 50s, I think, 1950s. And these are all groups where you can meet up for free and focus and find a partner. Many people run them. Annette also runs one. But if you check on the international focusing.org website, and also our community, Focusing on Borden, there's lots of changes groups all over the world, and they're free. They're completely free. You can find a focusing partner, many focusing partners. It's just an amazing thing. He wrote a paper called The Politics of Giving Therapy Away. And Jean really believed that if we created these partnerships of deep listening, that we would need to go to therapists much less often. And that has certainly been my experience. The more that we set up focusing groups and whatever, the less people just stop. They stop coming to me. They stay with their group, which is fantastic. It's wonderful. Or we form community, which is what we've done. So Annette's groups, I think, Annette, you meet twice a month, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
Mm.
Wednesdays in the afternoon, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, and Thursday evenings, 7 p.m. So it's, yeah, I've just put the link in so you can see the upcoming ones at on our Focusing on Board and community page.
Yeah. Okay, we have to go, sadly. We're going to have Joya back. And Joya, we're going to do more teaching together because I
Thank you.
love what you do.
I really appreciate the opportunity to do this.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring you into my course. Okay, be well, everyone. Be safe. See you next
Lovely seeing
time. We're
everyone.
doing one more thing. Katarina is here, and Katarina is doing. Do you want to say one sentence about your presentation?
Oh,
It's
yes,
October, Katarina.
yes. Mutual support would be the phrase.
Mutual support.
Yes, and it follows right with Joya. Yes, thank you.
Right.
Yes, beautiful.
Wonderful.
Okay, take good
Thank
care.
you, everyone.
See you then.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Good to see you,
Bye.
Jan. Thank you,
Bye,
Joya.
Mustafa. Bye.
Mustafa.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.